In this video, we will be analyzing Americans experiencing culture shocks in Switzerland. I'm an American who's been traveling the world and living abroad for nearly 2 years. And in that time, I had the fortune of spending 22 hours in Zurich, Switzerland on a layover. And those 22 hours blew my mind. And evidently, Switzerland has blown these Americans' minds as well.
I'm an American in Switzerland. The only thing I'm going to be thinking as I walk around Zurich is how clean these sidewalks are. You could lick them.
I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm obviously going to eat truffle fondue. This is actually good.
I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm gonna go shopping at the On store.
This is so cute.
I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm gonna be self-conscious because I'll think people are staring at me, but I'll later learn it's just the Swiss-German stare. Totally normal. I'm an American in Switzerland. I am gonna wonder whether this is glacial water and whether it's drinkable. I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm gonna exclusively use the Freitag bag that I got from my hotel. I'm an American in Switzerland. Here, I think alleyways are really cute. In America, they're creepy. Another cute alleyway. I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm obviously gonna spend an entire day at the Oblats. I'm an American in Switzerland. I am gonna be absolutely amazed by how people keep their bikes here unlocked and they don't worry about them getting stolen. I'm an American in Zurich. I'm obviously gonna go shopping at the Freitag store, which is just a bunch of containers. And then I'm obviously gonna climb all the way to the top. I'm an American in Switzerland. I'm gonna think even the underpasses are clean. Look at this.
Now, as far as people staring, I think this might have been my personal first culture shock in Switzerland. I was in the subway station at the airport in Zurich, and I was filming a vlog, and I guess that might have sort of played a role in my experience because it doesn't seem like there are a whole lot of people vlogging out there. But then at the same time, it seemed like everyone else kind of let me do my thing without really staring or even acknowledging my presence there. Maybe they just thought I was some other loud American or whatever. But there was this one guy there who was staring. I'm talking about staring to the point where I felt very uncomfortable. I've heard that this is a thing really in almost every country that speaks German. I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know what the association between the German language is with staring, but I've heard about this in Germany, haven't been there to confirm it for myself. Heard about this in Austria, again, haven't been there. And I've heard about this being the case in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, where, again, I do have an experience with that. And I find this really fascinating because in the US, I guess because people are more on edge and danger is just more of a daily reality, statistically speaking, and we'll touch more on danger here in a second, staring is not seen in a favorable light. It's just not something that you really do in the US unless you're looking to start problems. Now, I have noticed that people in Southeast Asia like to stare as well. I think that might have something to do with me being one of the only black people that they've probably ever seen in their whole entire lives, for some of them at least. But the staring thing, that definitely took me some getting used to coming from the US. Now, as far as the cute alleyways go, that's something that I find intriguing as well. I've noticed that they have something similar here in Vietnam, although they are a lot more gritty. And I was talking about this with my girlfriend yesterday. I really like that feature of infrastructure. I mean, having those small alleyways where only pedestrians can fit through, or maybe only a bicycle can fit through, but no cars can get through. To me, that's a very efficient use of space. And I think that particular example that she showed for the alley in Zurich, that one I would perceive as more safe than a US alleyway, not only because of the crime rate itself being lower in Switzerland, but also because when you think about American alleyways, if you've ever seen one before, a lot of times it's more so the shadows in the alleyways. There are a lot of dark spots. In the US, a lot of times, because everything is predicated on the car, the streets aren't really as well lit as places in Europe that I've been to. At least the Netherlands especially. The Netherlands and Valencia, I can attest, were very well lit. It's a lot more difficult for any type of human trafficking or any other nefarious activities to take place when there just aren't that many dark corners. On the topic of safety, when I was in Zurich, one of my biggest regrets from my time there was I pretty much stayed in my hotel room. And the reason why was because I went to my hotel room and I immediately fell asleep at probably 6 p.m., so early evening, woke up at around 11 or maybe even midnight. And I was looking out of the hotel window and I was thinking, wow, I really want to go out and explore a little bit more because I have my flight in the morning. I don't know when I'll get to come back to Zurich. I'm looking out of the window contemplating, but then I thought, I'm in an unfamiliar country. I don't really know anything about Switzerland, and I don't want to put myself in jeopardy. Looking back on it, I realize now I should have left that hotel room because I later found out that Zurich is literally one of the safest cities in the whole entire world. So if something was going to happen to me there, then it was just my time.
Hi friends. So as of yesterday, my husband and I have lived in Switzerland for exactly 3 months, and I thought I would share a few things that I have learned along the way. So the first one is everyone is way nicer than I could have even imagined. I feel like Swiss people get a bad rap. Everyone was telling us, oh my gosh, when you move to Switzerland, beware. Swiss people are not very friendly and they're pretty cold. But I cannot tell you from my personal experience, these Swiss people have been so kind. The second one is Italian food is literally a dream. We lived in Portland, Oregon before this and could not find good Italian food to save our lives. But it's so good here. I know it's not the same as Italy, but it is really good. Grüezi is hello, and tschüss is like the informal goodbye. The fourth thing I've learned is everything needs to be done by mail. You can start a lot of processes online, but once you hit submit on an online form, applying for an apartment, anything, it all has to be done by mail. And you also have to send your responses back by mail. And it's really annoying when you don't speak any German and your husband has to translate every single piece of mail you get. The next one is Google Translate doesn't work in many grocery stores because of their basement locations. So I learned real quick how to read a label. Except from this one time I came home with 3 tubes of mustard when I was just looking for mayonnaise. Which also comes in a metal tube, so it's really confusing. And my last little learning for these last 3 months is that if you're an expat, you'll feel me on this. If you're not an expat, you just don't get it. And sadly, many people back home just don't try to get it. So being an expat can be this extremely rewarding, beautiful experience, but it can also be lonely and it can also be really hard when those back at home really can't relate to what we're experiencing.
I've heard a lot of stereotypes about not just Switzerland, but almost every country in Europe, at least any country with colder weather. So the Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands, Germany, etc. about how cold the people are. Look, I don't have the best reference point, but in my 22 hours that I spent in Switzerland, I did meet a few pretty chill people. Granted, they were a lot younger, so maybe it's just a generational thing. Also, it might have had something to do with me vlogging and them just being excited to, I guess, meet a content creator or whatever. But the point is, I don't think this stereotype is nearly as severe as people make it out to be. Now, every country is different, so maybe people in Switzerland are a little colder than in the Netherlands, I don't really know, but in my experience, people in the Netherlands were actually very outgoing. What I want to know is, if you're Swiss and you've traveled around Europe, how do you feel like Swiss people, I'm asking you to assess yourself even a little bit here, how do you feel like Swiss people compare to people from other European countries in terms of overall outgoingness and friendliness? The impression that I get is that Swiss people are kind and nice, and if you ask them for help, they'll help you. But at the same time, it may be difficult to break into that friend group because Swiss culture, just like all the other European cultures, is very, very set in stone, in a sense. That said, I can see how that would lead to an experience of loneliness as an expat, and that is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. Now, I'm wired a little bit differently in that not only am I introverted, but I'm also very, very tolerant of being an outsider. So being here in Vietnam and being one of the only black people that most of these people may see this whole entire year doesn't really faze me. or just not really being able to relate to a lot of people here in terms of their cultural customs, or even in the Netherlands, having some discrepancies between how I move through life and how Dutch people move through life. That doesn't bother me. I'm okay with being the outsider. And in many ways, I thrive off of it, probably because I'm mixed race and because I never really had that set in stone culture to latch onto.
I'm an American living in Switzerland, and there are some things that are considered normal here that I find very weird. Number one, it is quite literally illegal to make too much noise on a Sunday, and this isn't just like watching your TV too loud or playing music really loud. This includes things like vacuuming and washing clothes, and people will literally call the police. Number two has to do with the recycling system. Switzerland has a very intense recycling system, which I think is great, but there is something that I find a bit odd. This has to do with specifically recycling cardboard, and I don't know if this is applicable everywhere in Switzerland, but I live in Zurich and it's applicable here. Unlike a lot of things where they have actual just collection points, for cardboard specifically, they pick it up every 2 weeks, and they expect you to flatten it, like break the cardboard down and put it into a little nice neat pile and tie it with a bow. I just think it's funny and kind of cute that they expect you to tie it as if it's a little present. Number three is that all grocery stores are closed on Sundays, which means if you don't do your shopping on Saturday, you're not gonna eat on Sunday, because a lot of restaurants are also closed. Number four, every region of Switzerland has its own flag, and on all of the flags that have animals, they're drawn with visible junk. I'm so serious, look it up. Number five, unless you have a valid excuse, all Swiss citizens are actually expected to participate in military duty, like basically a draft.
So I've heard a little bit about the noise situation in Switzerland. And look, being here in Vietnam, the amount of noise that I hear on a day-to-day basis honestly does wear me down a little bit. And the older I get, the more I crave silence. So I actually kind of see this as a good thing. Look, it's not my place to invalidate her experience, because clearly she has much more experience with Switzerland than I do. But I'm going to assume that you have more experience with Switzerland than she does. Bearing that in mind, I need you to confirm or deny my suspicion here that she might have just been exaggerating a little bit. I mean, people calling the police on you for vacuuming. I'm assuming that you have a little more freedom than that, but I have heard specifically that you cannot cut your grass on Sundays. So it's nice that you've just collectively decided to have a day where you can let your mind be at ease. Now, as far as grocery stores being closed on Sundays, this just seems to be a pretty common thing across Europe. What I found in Southeast Asia is that stores pretty much stay open the same hours every single day, doesn't matter what day it is. And I'm not gonna lie, I do feel like from a work-life balance standpoint, that is probably detrimental. But then again, in a place like Thailand or Vietnam, where the average person might be making something like $300 or $400 a month, and that's a whole different can of worms that is beyond the scope of this video, but maybe it would be more beneficial for them to have access to those extra working hours so they can make more money to feed their families. Whereas in a place like Switzerland, where you're making, I don't know, anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 Swiss francs a month and beyond per person, it's just not really necessary. That's a luxury that you have access to. And I feel like in the US, it's kind of similar to Southeast Asia in that there are so many people who are just scraping by that extra shift, that extra amount of time that they can work and accumulate more money really can make the difference between them being able to feed their kids or not. Whereas in Europe, you have the social safety nets. And then again, in Switzerland, you have the social safety net and you have the higher salaries on top of that. So there's literally no point. As far as compulsory military service, I've heard about this before, but I never really knew what it entailed. This person in the comments right here is saying that military isn't obligatory for anyone. Women can but don't have to go. And men can pick between military service or social service. What I want to know is, if you're Swiss watching this, or if you're from another country where compulsory military service is a thing, what does that actually entail? How long do you have to serve? What does the day-to-day of that look like? What are they having you do? What are they teaching you? And conversely, if you chose to do the social service, what does that entail?